I'm Angie Gray,
And I'm Rashonda Young.
and we are sister friends. We can't say it together on a recording, it sounds weird, but we are sister friends. And this episode, we're so excited to have Miss Tara Jenkins. She's a certified musical therapist. Is that how I say it?
Uh, Board certified music
Oh,
therapist, but you were
ooh,
close.
no, you need to say that because
Yeah,
you put
yeah.
in the work. You put in the work for that board certified musical therapist.
hmm
And so we're really excited. So, Tara, I want to just first say I'm really grateful for you to be on. I was excited. You just had your first introduction to my beautiful friend and podcast partner, Rashonda Young. You saw that she is the opposite of lazy. I was joking around because she has her hands in so many things that she is so excellent at. And then, you shared a little bit with her. So we're really excited to have you on. You and I met, tell me if I'm off, but I feel like did we meet through James? Was that James?
Yeah. I think we were both headed to think tank, and then I know some things came up for you, but I think it was kind of through James and through the think tank leadership program that we got connected.
Yeah. So because you weren't at the year before, I was at the year
Mm.
before. I sponsored a nurse this year, and then Todd, my husband, had a little issue, so I couldn't make it. But I heard it was so great. So a little plug for Think Tank. James Lee and Nicole will lead that, and it's been a huge part of so many of our relationships here, and you and I. So we've been
Yeah.
talking a bit, and we're really excited. So can you tell us more about what you do? Tell us what a board certified musical therapist or music therapist does.
Sure. Yeah. So, music therapy is a clinical and evidence based practice. So, we're really focusing on individualized goals and objectives, and our work supports clients through social, emotional, cognitive, physical, communication, musical, and spiritual needs. So, sometimes we're working on all of those things, sometimes we're working on one or two of those things. And essentially, we're using different aspects of music to achieve individualized goals, both in and outside of sessions.
Mm.
So we begin with an assessment and think about a client's strengths and their needs. And then we kind of tailor treatment depending on their needs and interests. So we do singing activities, moving, listening to music, creating music together. And I always say clients don't need formal training to participate in music therapy. So you don't need to be a musician to benefit from music therapy. And another thing I like to highlight is we have 4 years of coursework as music therapists and a 6 month internship. And so that's a combined total of about 1,200 hours of clinical training working with different groups of people. And after that internship, we sit for the board exam. We graduate, we sit for the board exam, and then that's how we obtain the credential MTBC, which is Music Therapist Board Certified. So I always say we work with all ages and stages of life. Anywhere a nurse can work, we can work. So to bring you into it, Angie.
Yeah, no,
But yeah, most places you'd see nurses, you can see us as well.
that's such a great way to explain that. That helps me from that perspective for sure.
Mhm.
Um, I'm a hog with all the questions, so Rashonda has to really.
Yeah. So yeah.
I'm working.
I have to jump in where I get in. I'm a
Yeah.
little quieter than my beautiful friend over here. So I know when my stepdad, for those who are listening and thinking, oh my gosh, did her dad pass? But it's my stepdad who's my dad still. We did in-home hospice therapy for him, and so it was offered to us to have a music therapist. So you would go into a home for individuals as well as your clinical work, or how do you operate? Yeah, it's a great question. So it kind of depends on the therapist and what setting they're in. But for me, my clinical services are groups and individuals. So I do visit people in their homes and go to them as well as in the community. So long term care, assisted living, dementia care communities, as well as community groups where community members of the group. So, people from all over the area. I'm in Wilmington, North Carolina. So people from all over can kind of come into the community to have a group. So there's a couple different ways for group settings. And then I also provide telehealth services. So I visit with people in their homes via Zoom. And so that looks a little differently, but I've been partnering with some different organizations where they're providing music wellness sessions. It's not traditional music therapy. Typically, we have an assessment and treatment plan, goals and objectives. So these are a little bit more casual, and it's so the caregiver can kind of see how we can have a meaningful experience together, and then they can take it past our time together because the organization sponsors a short-term amount of sessions. So sometimes I work with clients for years. I've worked with clients who I've seen them through their journey living with dementia and in through end of life. So I've been able to have that privilege to support them all the way through. And then there are some where I'm more short term. So it's just for a little while. So it really depends on the person and kind of what they want to get out of the sessions.
Wow. Okay. Um, so when you said that about your stepdad, Rashonda, it reminded me that when my dad was dying, actually, we did have someone come in. I wasn't able to be there, but someone came in and did some music therapy for him. And I wish I had known that that would have been something that possibly, that person could have been part of his care team. We took care of him at home, like you did with your stepdad, Rashonda. Um, so that's pretty cool. So you found yourself though, currently, do you do most of your work in the dementia space, or where do you do most of your work?
Yeah, so my company is Harmony in Dementia. So that's really my passion, is to work with people living with dementia and other cognitive changes. And the kind of the way the name came about is you need multiple people to create harmony, multiple instruments, multiple voices. And that's true for anybody who's on that journey with dementia. You need a whole care team, and caregivers need support as much as the person who's living with dementia as well. But I have worked with folks who are healthy and active, older adults, all the way through end of life care. And going back to hearing both of your stories, I'm so happy to hear that your loved ones were able to have some music in end of life. Music is one of the first things we can respond to in the womb. It's one of the last things we respond to at end of life as well. So it is really important in that part of the journey and the transition. As things are changing, music can be a great support to everyone who's involved.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Your turn, Shonda.
So I have not when it comes to plants, but I do know some music therapists who work with equine therapy. I believe it's with horses. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. So I know some music therapists who will co-treat in that way and co-treat with other allied health professions. When I worked full time in long term care, when I was working at one community full time, I did incorporate senses, so smell, taste with foods, and incorporate that with music. As a contractor, I don't really do that so much anymore because I don't know as much about the residents and know their allergies and sensitivities and things like that. So I always try to be careful if I'm bringing in other modalities. Music is really the main one for me, but I'm definitely open to pairing and trying things. I've had some experience working with art therapists in the past, so combining art and music. So that's something where, maybe I'm playing or singing, and then they're engaged in an art activity at the same time. So I've done some collaboration in that way when it comes to other disciplines. Yeah.
So cool. I remember when Rashonda was there, you sent me a little video, Tara. She sent me a video from there. And it was so, this seemed very logical for me, for you to ask this question, because it was like plants were singing. And it
Yeah.
was the music, right? So it was super fascinating. And so Shauna and I are both science girls. And so I'm very interested in, if you can tell me, like, what's the science behind why we respond to music. We are a huge music family. My daughter is a writer and a singer and a producer, and so we love music. I play some guitar, and not like you're amazing, but I'd like to be. Anyway, can you share with us, like, the science behind why we as human beings respond to music like we do?
Yeah. One of the reasons music is so powerful is because it activates many areas of our brain all at the same time. And that includes areas of memory and emotion, which is also why it can be so powerful for people living with dementia. And I always give the example, we can all listen to the same song, and we're all going to have a different reaction and emotion based on our past experiences. So it's going to take us somewhere different for each one of us. And part of that is because our neurons are continuing to fire until a connection is made. And again, that's why it's another reason why it can be so powerful for people living with dementia, is because even if there are certain areas of their brain that are damaged or affected by what they're going through, their neurons are going to continue to fire. And music is multisensory. So you're getting a lot of different sensory input, visual, you're getting auditory, tactile if you're playing instruments, or sometimes clients will even just put their hand on my guitar for the vibrations or be able to strum my guitar. And so you're getting a lot of input, and all of that is working to get some output from that client. So sometimes it's just a finger tapping, and that's amazing for that person. Sometimes it's singing and dancing and moving around. Sometimes it's for rest and relaxation. And other times it's just to be present, with someone else. It really, I always say to people, there's no wrong way to listen to music and to enjoy music. And sometimes in my groups, I remind people of that, because sometimes you do have strong personality types. So you have some folks who, why aren't you clapping, or why aren't you engaging, and just to remind everyone that some people enjoy listening with their eyes closed, or some people want to relax and not be an active participant, but they want to be more passive, and they can still receive the benefits of what we're doing, no matter which type of participant they are.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you for that. It's
Mhm.
fascinating.
Mhm. Yeah. So again, it kind of depends on who you're working with, and there are different assessments out there. But for older adults, the assessment, it really, I try to do it over 2 sessions for individuals for the most part, and it's really for me to get a better sense of who they are. So I send a questionnaire beforehand too, and so that includes not only their music preferences, but their occupation, where they've lived, what kind of hobbies they've enjoyed. Have they done any volunteer work? Were they in the military? And so I get a lot of that information before I even meet with the client. And a lot of times that's helpful because I might know what to stay away from. I always ask caregivers, is there any topics that cause distress or anxiety? Is there any topics I should stay away from? Especially when first meeting someone, I want to build positive rapport and try to start that relationship off in the right way. And so also having that information, I can talk about where they grew up. If I knew they grew up in California, I might be able to incorporate some music or questions. And when we think about music, music can also be very uh, geography based. I was trying to think of the
Mhm.
right word, but I think about my time when I was in Austin, Texas. I'm now in Wilmington, North Carolina. But when I was in Austin, Texas, there were some country singers that I wasn't familiar with until I moved to that area. And that's true for all different styles of music. So it is important to kind of know that for music preferences, as well as just learning about the whole person, learning what they want to get out of this, what maybe the caregiver, if they're the ones seeking services. And then the assessment itself, I will bring a variety of instruments. I'll bring a variety of live and recorded music, and it's to see how they engage. So cognitively, how are they engaging with me? Physically, do they have any physical limitations, or what are their physical abilities? And then also meaningful conversation and discussion. And so my assessment, it's broken down into different categories and different parts. And so it's a lot of it is a checklist, and then other parts, I'll fill out after the session. And then that really guides me with how to move forward with treatment as far as what types of goals and objectives to focus on. A lot of times we are focusing on reminiscence. So sometimes I'm working with clients to I provide a list of song titles and then memories that they have associated with it. So then that's something that their care team or their family can have. And then they know that those are not only positive songs, but here are some of the memories that they bring back. And then you can kind of have those discussions along the way. So it's one example of something I might work on with a client.
That's Yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah.
So you, to your point of you could have one song and it might have a total different response for one person versus the other. I'm hoping and praying that my kids know if I ever find myself in a situation like that where they need to pick some music, there's a song that it's a Robert Palmer song, and when it comes on, I'm like, turn it off, just turn it off. And my husband's like, God, that's so weird, why do you
Yeah.
well, it's because, yeah, those neural pathways or whatever, is associated with something that and I actually could not pinpoint it. I'd have to sit down and think, but I know in general for me that wasn't a great time in my life, so it brings visceral feelings up for me,
Hmm.
that particular song. There's probably another song, but that made me also then think about, you mentioned earlier, working with the caregivers themselves. So I think that's super cool because I coach a lot of caregivers, and to think about the trauma that they're experiencing along with their person who has the disease. How do you so your assessment is for the person, like the person with dementia. Do you
Hmm.
also do assessments for the caregivers? And can you share any really cool experiences that you've had specifically, I think, with the caregivers? Because I love that you mentioned that. I know my dad loved it. I wasn't there, but I heard that he loved it, but I would have loved it. I would have loved the experience, and it would have been able to be part of a healing process for me. So do you have any stories that you can share about that?
Yeah, when it comes to assessment, I haven't had the opportunity to work directly with caregivers as them being the direct benefit in that way.
Mm.
So mostly my assessments are for the people living with dementia, but again, I'm assessing the whole situation, the whole connection. So the caregivers, I always share with caregivers they can be as much or as little a part of the music experience as they want to be. So I have seen some clients where the caregiver took that as respite. They stayed in the home for safety purposes, but they were able to make phone calls. They were able to, do online shopping or even just rest while I was there. So sometimes caregivers utilize that time that they want it to be for their person, but they also want to have their time to do what they need to do. And then I've also had the experience where the caregiver is very much a part of the music. And one story that came to mind right now as you asked that question. It was early on. I was still using Skype. So
Yeah.
that kind of dates when it was. But before I lived in Austin, I lived in Washington, D.C. And so I was visiting a husband and wife. They lived in their home and their son took care of them. And he was very involved in their care. And he was always there when I had my music therapy sessions with them. And we would Skype in family from another state who wanted to be a part of the music experience. So we would do it occasionally. And then when I was moving to Austin and shared the news, he was very open and said, "Well, why don't we try to Skype with mom and dad and see if we can still keep this going?" Now I do this regularly, but then it was so many years ago now. And so I wasn't sure would it work. And we were like, well, let's try it. He was open. They were open. Everybody was open to giving it a try. And so I was able to work with both of them until they both passed, which was really, really special and really unique because I had this really strong relationship with both them and the family. And he used it not only as a way that his parents could meaningfully engage with each other, they could meaningfully engage with him, and then also to keep them active and stimulated in their homes. So that was one way. And I would love to have the opportunity to work with caregivers directly. There
Mhm.
is some research out there in the music therapy journals, and I'm sure it's outside of music therapy journals as well, as music for caregivers. So I do education on music and self care. So, how caregivers or professionals can use it for themselves. Music is so accessible. And so, you don't need to go to the spa or get a pedicure, and those things are amazing and I love those things, but not everybody has the time and the money to do an hour's worth of self-care, a weekend worth of self-care, especially as a caregiver if you're a caregiver full time. So music is a wonderful way to do that, and I do know music therapists who have had specific caregiver groups where everybody can come together like a caregiver support group,
Yeah.
but it's facilitated by a music therapist.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I have more
Yeah.
questions, but it's Shonda's turn.
Yeah. So for me and my work with groups, I really like 60 minutes because, especially depending on if you're working with people who are on different parts of their journey living with dementia, sometimes it takes 2 or 3 songs to kind of get a group in a groove and to get everybody connected and focused. So 60 minutes for me is a real sweet spot because we can engage. I'm trying to think of my latest session. Want to say anywhere from 6 to 8 songs. It kind of varies. And that also leaves time for meaningful discussion. I bring in pictures. I sometimes have song lyrics that I'll share. I want to make sure that they're a part of the group and that we're able to do a lot of in the moment. So I do a lot of in the moment pivoting. If one experience we're doing with instruments, if we're drumming, or I've got lots of different handheld percussion instruments, if that's going really well, we might do 2 or 3 repetitions of that song because I can see they're really engaged and they're really enjoying it. And with individual sessions, it really varies. For the most part, I like 45 minutes to an hour. Again, I feel it gives us a lot of time. In some of the sessions that I'm doing with these organizations for music wellness, we're doing 30-minute sessions. And I found that we can still have a meaningful experience, but you are sharing less because you have less time. So sometimes it's 2 to 3 songs, sometimes it's 3 to 4 songs. Again, it depends on how much meaningful discussion, what is going on outside of the music we're sharing together. And then that also depends. Sometimes people will come to me and say, well, mom or dad's attention span, they won't sit for longer than 15 minutes. And what I typically share with folks is I usually find that people will sit longer for me. And again, it's because it's multisensory. Sometimes I go into a dementia care community and they're a little surprised that I'm able to hold the attention for folks for 60 minutes. And that's very commonplace. I usually will not book a shorter time for groups because of I have a structure and a system of how I like to get everybody warmed up, then kind of when we're in the sweet spot. And then I also want to give them kind of a warm down time, as well as, this is our second to last song. This is our last song, give them preparation that it's time that we're wrapping up. So with groups, I like to stick with 60 minutes. With individuals, it really depends on a lot of different variables. And honestly, for transparency, sometimes it's budget. Ideally, I think 60 minutes is great, but not everybody can afford that in individual situation. So then we might look at 30 minutes or 45 minutes, and not just because of that. It might also be, you know, I want it to be guided for what's best for the client. But when it comes down to schedule, ideally weekly for most people is where you're going to see the most benefits. But then that comes down to budget a lot of times too. So, mhm. Yeah. Mhm. Well, and for I would say too, for kind of what you were doing more of a retreat setting, or if you're doing more relaxation, I would say I would lean more towards the 90 minutes. Because if you are leading, muscle relaxation or different types of meditations and things like that, again, sometimes you need a little bit more time to get into that. And then depending on questions, and like you said at the end. So for my work, 60 minutes is the sweet spot. But yeah, music therapists who work in mental health, music therapists who work in the hospital, sometimes it's shorter. Sometimes maybe they are with a patient for just a few minutes or they're there longer. It really kind of depends on the setting. Hmm.
Great. Tara, mine is twofold. I'm going to squeeze one in.
Sure.
First of all, do you feel like organizations, so as a coach, and I really advocate for organizations to pay for my services to support their staff and their teams and their nurse leaders. I find that budget for most people outside of that is challenging, and I think it's a win-win. And I really do feel it's the responsibility of the organization to support those people that are showing up for them. I wondered what, if you're open to sharing, what do you, under what sort of terms do you work? Do you work mostly on an individual basis where the individual family is hiring you, or are you mostly being hired on from the organization?
It's really a blend. It's really mixed, blended.
Mhm.
I Most of music therapy, especially in the dementia space, is private pay or grant funded
Mhm.
opportunities. That's where a lot of things come first. So if an individual was coming to me, there are instances where people have paid for music therapy through health savings accounts. I haven't worked with anyone directly, but I know music therapists who've been reimbursed in that way. So I always encourage that when I'm meeting with a client, if they have that, and that's an opportunity where the caregiver could pay for services for themselves or for their loved one in that way. But we are not reimbursed by insurance for the most part. There are Medicaid waiver programs. There's like very specific instances. Sometimes rehabilitative goals, if we're co-treating with a speech therapist or an occupational therapist or physical therapy, but it's not across the board. It's not commonplace for music therapists to be covered by insurance. So there are some challenges there. Again, when it comes to budget, in an ideal world, what I would love is that there were music therapists in communities. I worked at one time in a full-time position where they saw the benefit and the need of music therapy, and I designed a full-time music therapy program. That's the ideal situation. Part of the issue is there aren't enough of us. I know there's over 10,000 of us, but I don't know what the exact number is now, but we don't all work with people living with dementia. So that number is even smaller. So part of it is there aren't enough of us in all the areas. And then, of course, it comes down to what the community or the organization, what are their principles and their goals, and what are they looking to provide for the people they're caring for. I have had some communities, one in particular, music therapy was a budget line. So what's really beautiful about that is it doesn't get touched. If it's in there as a budget line, it's not part of the activities budget as a whole, which a lot of times they're given very little to do a lot. And I used to be an activities director, so I know that side of it as well. And a lot of times that's kind of my in, is to talk with the activities director. But again, in an ideal world, I would love to be talking with executive directors and about building programs from the top down. So, talking with the executive directors and bringing in marketing. When I was a full time activities director, I worked very closely with my marketing department because their budgets typically were a lot larger than the activities budget. And they have the funds, if they can document that this is bringing leads into the community. And what better way to bring leads in than to say, we have a music therapy program. We have someone who is contracted or part-time or full-time, whatever kind of program they want to have in their community, that's the ideal. That's what I would love to be doing more of, and even advocating where I meet with executive directors. And if it's not here in Wilmington, okay, is there a music therapist in your area? Can we get a music therapist a job? I, as much as I want work for myself, which I very much do, I also want to help students and professionals to have positive experiences in work environments, because there are people who leave the field due to burnout or due to uncomfortable or kind of toxic environments and situations. And that happens not just in my area of what I focus on, but in all different age groups that we work with. And it's hard to see that. So any way that I can help support. I know I kind of went a couple directions with that question,
Yes.
but yeah, it's our biggest challenge. I will say it's my biggest challenge, is coming down to the funding. And people, I get a lot of people who say, I see the benefit, I really want your program, I can't afford it, or I can't hire you. And then I get others who view me more as entertainment. So they think maybe I'll come in and volunteer, or I'll come in and do it for a pretty low fee. And we're different than entertainment. And I say entertainment has its place in long-term care for sure. I think it's very beneficial and important, but it's a different type of stimulation than what a music therapy group would provide for people.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's tough. It is very tough. I was just in a meeting the other day with people that have been in sort of this space, whether it's coaching or music therapy, these fluffy things or whatever. And the facts still are true. After so many years, we are making some shifts and there's movement happening. But it's about finding those communities that say yes and just finding them and sticking with them,
Hmm.
and eventually they'll be the ones at the forefront. But yeah, I feel for
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
I think I think the other challenge too is, especially in long-term care and senior living, the turnover is high. So if you work with an executive director or an activities director, and I just had this experience not too long ago, someone who really supports your work and then they leave and they go somewhere else. The positive is, if they stay in your area, a lot of times you get hired. So that's the upside. You're getting hired somewhere new. But sometimes whoever comes in may make their own changes or have their own ideas or their own connections of who they want to bring in. So sometimes you lose business that way too.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's so hard because geographically it depends on that too. Cost of living, all of those things. But I would say for individual sessions, you're probably looking from anywhere from like $100 to, I would say, 200, but probably 100 to 150 would probably be in that range. And again, that depends on the duration, how long the session is, as well as how often, how frequent. But I would say that's probably a good range to expect if you were looking to hire a music therapist for an individual. And then groups vary. And again, there's a lot of variables there. And for me, in my practice, I do offer somewhat of a sliding scale. I want to be able to help people, but also being a solo business owner, I also, need to make money to support myself. So I think as music therapists too, that becomes a challenge for us. We are people who want to support our clients, and sometimes we're not business owners first. That's not necessarily why we got into the profession. And so I think, there are music therapists out there who are amazing business owners, and then there are some out there who, you know it's like any profession. When you go out and work for yourself, there are different reasons why you do that. And so some are stronger at it than others. But I always say, we need to be charging for our experience and our expertise as well. So, working with me, I have almost 20 years working in this space, and I'll never say I've seen everything when it comes to working with people with dementia, because every individual is different. Every experience is unique and different. But I have a lot of tools in my toolbox because of the amount of time I've been in this space. And so with that, sometimes might come at a little bit higher of a price point than someone who's just starting out, who doesn't have that experience and expertise, as well as the additional training. I've done a lot of dementia specific trainings on top of my music therapy training and education as well.
So good. So good, Tara. And I would, I'm, 58 years old. My mom is 78. Shonda's mom's, around the same age. And I don't, I think they've got a plan and we'll see how it goes, but plans change. And if
Hmm.
they end up being somewhere, God forbid, what a huge decision that is, where to find a quality place to go. And I can't imagine, I mean, it would be a game changer for me if I had, a marketing strategy with someone that had a Tara available,
Hmm.
that was going to be someone. I love that strategy, having someone just be in-house and have there be a budget line for music therapy. That's the way to go. You're able to develop a relationship with not just the clients and the patients, but the family,
Hmm.
so what an asset that is. Um, on that note, I had a question about, do you have opportunity, or have you had opportunity to be present and provide therapy while someone is in the process of passing?
So I have had the opportunity for folks who have kind of been said they're actively
Yeah.
dying, but I've not had the opportunity for someone to pass while I was there present in the room providing music. But I think I've gotten pretty close a couple of times, thinking back on some experiences. And I always just feel honored and privileged to be in that space with those people in that time. Music therapists who work full time in hospice care, and you do find there are more and more hospices who are having music therapy departments and programs, and I love to hear the growth that's happening in the hospice world. And again, that isn't my full time world, but I'm happy to be in that space when I have clients who are at that point in their journey. Um, but for the moments that I've had, sometimes as a music therapist, you're there just as much for the family as you are for the person who's passing. So I've had, sometimes we're doing bereavement work. So sometimes we're doing work after someone has passed. And music therapists will do that type of work. I've played at memorial services. So sometimes music therapists will be asked to play at someone's memorial service. I had a client who I saw pre-COVID in person and during COVID over telehealth. And he passed away during COVID when you could only gather in groups of about, I think it was 10 or 8 or less, and you had to be outside. It was when it's pretty early on, and the family included me as one of the 8 or one of the 10. I can't remember how many of us there
Yeah.
were. And it was an outdoor memorial service, and they asked for me to play. And there were 2 or 3 songs that were very meaningful to him. And, that's an experience that I'll never forget. It was so powerful and meaningful and emotional. And, then you had COVID on top of it, right?
Yeah.
So it would have been that experience no matter what, but being in that time and with everything that was going on, it just heightened that experience even more so.
I bet, Tara. I mean, we
Yeah.
know that music is so powerful. I mean, there's songs written, many, many, many songs written
Yeah.
about the power of music. And I mean, I love music, so I can't imagine that not being part of my life. And especially if I had, a disease and I was stuck with that, or, and at a dying experience. I hope that is possible for me. On that note, and we lost Rashonda somewhere. Hopefully she'll come back.
I
But
know. Yeah, I'm hoping she'll jump back
yeah,
in.
on that note, I was wondering, talk to me about how you got into this. Usually people have, from my own experience, I got into what I do because, there was something really challenging that I went through and I learned from it. A lot of other people are inspired by same thing. What is your story behind the why of becoming a music therapist, a board
Yeah.
certified, a board certified. And yeah, girl, you should be charging what you're
Yeah.
charging. I know as a business owner myself, right? That's always the thing, when to level
Mhm.
up and if we don't put value on it and stick. I just had this it happened today where I'm like, hmm,
Yeah.
I know everybody's got a budget and I know every
Yeah. Well, and it's
and
hard.
I know everybody's got a budget. So,
Yeah. And
yeah,
that includes you too, your budget
right.
too. But it's also, I say too, it's hard too, because if we're undercharging, then we're doing a disservice to the other music therapists out there in the community
Yes.
too. We all kind of have to lift each other up. And I think that's true for all professions.
Yes.
But for ours specifically, I find that a lot. But going back to my journey, I knew I didn't want to perform. I knew I didn't want to teach music, but I wanted to do something with music. So for the music therapy side, that's kind of where I started. I started looking up other majors in music, and I had a band director who knew someone who went to Shenandoah University, which is where I ended up going, not for music therapy, for something else. And he was like, I think they have a music therapy program. And then I explored other programs as well and did auditions. A lot of times you have to audition and get accepted into the music school as well as the university. So there's kind of like two tracks when it comes to that type of work. And as far as older adults and long-term care, my grandmother, when I was in, I want to say it was middle school. I was very close with her all my life. But I think I was around middle school age when she went into a nursing home, and she had a couple different diagnoses and going on. And every time we would visit, I felt that I could be doing more, but I didn't know what more was. Like, I felt like there was a way, because there'd be moments where she'd make a connection, and I always share with people, you never know when you're going to make a connection in the work I do, and if anyone in the dementia care space, you never know when that connection is going to be made. And I felt that without being able to articulate it, that I was like, well, sometimes I feel like we're connecting and sometimes we're not, but I don't know the why. I didn't know the why. And so when I went to school, our first practicum, which are like rotations in other professions, was with older adults in a nursing home. And it just clicked for me. I felt really connected to that age group and working with those individuals. And fast forward 4 years later in my coursework, my 6-month internship was at that same nursing home. So
Wow.
I stayed in Winchester, where Shenandoah University is, to do my internship, and it was at that same nursing home where I had the first experience. So I kind of had my first experience and my last experience as a student in the same place. And after that 6-month internship, I very much knew I wanted to continue working in the aging space in some way, shape, or form after that. Yeah.
I love it so much. I'm a huge advocate for, again, saying everyone needs to have this be a budget line. I cannot
Mhm.
imagine. I know, again, like if this happens for my family, and what's the giant percentage that it will for someone in my family, right? Everyone, I want a music therapist on staff. I want that.
Yeah.
I'll ask for it. That's for
Yeah.
sure. That's for
Well,
sure.
and that a lot of times is how we get in places.
Yep,
Sometimes it
yeah.
is.
So would that be something that you would say, as we wrap up
Yeah.
in the last few minutes, like, is that something that you would say? Would you suggest to folks, if you want a musical therapist, what would you suggest? How do they
Yeah,
do it?
I advocacy is very powerful, and we advocate every day as music therapists, but some of the strongest advocacy comes from other allied health professionals. So it comes from nurses or social workers or doctors who are advocating for services to be in a particular setting. I was just in March, a few months ago now, was at a music therapy conference, and they gave the advocacy award. One went to a social worker who advocated to get music therapy more a part of a hospice program, and one went to a family member who advocated to get her child services in the school system,
Mm,
to
that's
be a music therapist, to be on the IEP, part of the IEP, and be on the team for her child, and then eventually it was for many children.
awesome.
So sometimes that's where it starts. The advocacy starts with the client wants it, and so then there's more of a push to get it. And the other thing I wanted to say, to kind of veer off this, but I just wanted to make sure to mention this because we've kind of shared this about, wanting to have music present at end of life or during these changes in our life journey, documenting music preferences. So, you can put that in your advanced directives if you
Oh my God.
want. You can put whatever you want. But putting, and I need to get on it. Honestly, I tell people to do it and I haven't done my own, but creating a playlist that's like, these are the songs I would like to hear. And so even if you don't have a music therapist, you have that playlist. So somebody can go to Spotify or Apple or whatever it is and play those songs. And it's also really important for the care team, because if you have someone who's being cared for at home and then they have to transition into a long-term care community, or maybe they have a hospital stay, providing the staff with the songs that work as well as the songs that don't work. Going back to the song that you're like, please do not play that for
Yes.
me. That's what made me be like, oh, I want to make sure I mention this. Because I think documenting preferences is really important, and documenting the positive and the negative songs, because I'm the same way. Sometimes people think classical music, is sometimes thought of as like, oh, that's relaxing. And some of it is, some of it isn't. It really depends on the individual's preferences. But if you played certain pieces that I had to play in college, I had
You want to
performance
barf.
anxiety. My performance anxiety was like through the roof. I played French horn. I was fine. I was not great. I wasn't, I was okay. But I got so nervous that a lot of times my nerves affected how I played. I was probably a better player than I was presented as in some spaces. So if you went back and played those songs for me, they would cause me anxiety instead of being beneficial and relaxing and going back to the song that you said you wouldn't care to hear. So I think it's just as important that we know what songs we want to hear for ourselves, for the people we care for, and the songs that we don't want present. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that you made me think of the other thing I was thinking of too, which
Hmm.
was I think I mean, it's for me like top of the list. One of the most intimate things you can do is share your playlist with someone. Like,
Hmm.
I'm always asking my kids, share your playlist with me. I want to know what kind of music you love. I
Yeah.
just think it's super intimate and it's such a great way to get to know people. So I'm really glad we came back to that. Um,
Yeah, there's I'll quickly mention this, and I'm going to look up on my phone, just it's called Music League, and it's run through Spotify, but it's like a separate app. And you can join random leagues or you can create a league. I'm in a league with my family, with my
oh,
nieces,
cool.
and nephews, and my brother-in-law and sister-in-law. And there's prompts. So I think the most recent song is a song about an animal. And so everybody submits a song and then everybody votes. And then you have a playlist that you can listen to from those songs. And so and then, like points are tallied at the end. And my husband did one for the same group, and it's just a playlist for each person. So songs that you think they would like. So you can do it however you want. So and then there are leagues that other people run, so you can just join open leagues.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so they can be very specific or very broad, but I think it's been going for a while now, but I just recently became aware of it when my family they were like, "Hey, do you want to be a part of this?" And so we all joined, and so it's been kind of fun, and it's been a great way to connect
Yeah.
on a different level with everybody, and then also get to know people, like you said, through their music preferences.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Make a note
Yeah.
of sending that to me because you're going to send me all the links that I'll put in the show
Yes.
notes,
Yeah. I'll send
your
that to you. Yeah.
website and how people get a hold of you. But you
Hmm.
can tell me that right now before I ask you a question before we close.
Sure.
Where do people find you to have you come and work for their communities or their family member? Where do people find you?
Yeah, so I'm at Harmony in Dementia. So that's on all social media. My website is www.harmonyindementia.com. So you can find me on any of the things. I also share a lot of free education and resources on my social media. So I share, what a day in the life of a music therapist is like, as well as benefits of music, more general resources for the aging and care space. So I'm always sharing different people to follow, different organizations to connect with, if there's free events, any events that I lead. So a lot of times, again, I'll work with an organization, they'll hire me to do a webinar, but it'll be free to the community. So I'm always sharing those type of events that I have as well.
You are so good at that. You are so good at giving
Thank you.
back. Okay, I guess now I have one more question. So if you, this is how it always goes. I'll have like 10 more questions and I'm just like, can I get one more in?
Yeah.
Um, if you were a person that is taking care of your family member with dementia and you're watching this and you're like, wow, that is so cool. Okay, I'm going to be an advocate. I'm going to see if my, if how I can get it in as a personal person, or if my family members in the community, I'm going to ask, can we get a music therapist in the meantime, do people just kind of experiment? Do they just like, oh, I think mom or I think dad really like this kind of music, so I'm going to put it on? And do you know how to answer, like, so what would they look for? You know what I'm saying? Like, in general, what would be good practice if they're going to do that?
Yeah, so I do a whole training on that.
Oh, you
So
do?
I do, yeah. So I just spoke at a caregiver conference here. I was the next county over from where I live here in the greater Wilmington area. And it was how to have a meaningful experience with someone living with dementia. And it kind of went through all of that. But if somebody was listening and wanted to know where to start, I suggest a couple things. Ask the individual directly. If they can tell you their music preferences, that's the best source of information. They may not be able to, if you ask what's your favorite song, they may not be able to answer that. So you could start with, do you like country or rock and roll? So
Mm.
either or questions. Or do you like the Beatles? Yes or no. So they may be able to answer those questions, which can help you narrow down preferences. There's a lot of research that says music from our late teens to early 20s is the music that stays with us. So, especially for caregivers, I always recommend that's a great starting point if you don't know someone's music preferences. As music therapists, I encourage us to expand outside that box. And as you get to know your loved one's music preferences, expand outside that box, because I have clients who love Pink and they also love the Beatles. Yeah, like I'm working with a client right now, and we just talked about Pink Floyd because she attended a concert of Dark Side of the Moon. So, the music that I'm sharing with folks really runs decades. We're going from one end to the other, so it's really individualized. And another recommendation I would have for people is to explore a music collection. So does somebody have a record collection, an 8-track tape, cassettes, CDs, digital music? Have they created their own playlists on a platform? And that in itself can be an activity. That in itself can be a meaningful experience. That, maybe the grandchildren are coming by. So maybe that's something that they can do, and look through record albums because it's so tactile. You have that album or a CD jacket, and you can flip through and look at the lyrics and different things like that. But that's another good starting point for music preferences. So if somebody wanted to do it on their own, and then a shameless plug, I co-wrote a book called Music, Memory, and Meaning. And
You did?
yeah, yeah.
I didn't know that.
I co-wrote it with two other music therapists. It was published back in 2017. But
Nice.
the whole idea of the book was for a caregiver to be able to have the book and a way to access music, and then they could lead a meaningful music experience. So the first part of the book talks about why music is powerful, how to set up your environment, how to have like a successful experience for everybody involved, how to figure out music preferences. The second part are 15 research-based playlists. So from our work, the three of us, and then we took a survey of music therapists working in long-term care at that time when the book was published. And so we have like songs from, I think it's the 20s and the 30s through the 70s, rock and roll, Broadway, country, and they're just the most common or most popular songs that we found in our work at that time. I would say now there may be some changes or additions I would make, but it's still very beneficial. And then the third part are meaningful discussion questions. So how to take the music further. So it picks a song from the playlist, and then it tells you, some facts about it, when it was written, who recorded it, what you can do while listening. So can you move to the music, dance, that kind of a thing. And then it gives a couple questions to ask to take the music further. And in the training that I talked about, that I did about how to have a meaningful music experience, that training, all of that is included in that. So we go through a lot of the structure of the book, but we go a little bit deeper in the training, because having everyone in there in person, you can expand on what the book has in it. So
Terry, that is so awesome. And people can find that on your website?
Yeah, you can find it on my website and it's available on Amazon. But yeah,
Okay,
either way.
great.
Yeah, yeah.
What's
So
the
it's
name
on
of the book?
Amazon.
Say the name of the book one more time.
Music, Memory, and Meaning. And it's a longer title. It's so funny because I have to like look for the rest of it. But Music, Memory, and Meaning is the first part of it. I think it's how to have a meaningful experience. It
We'll
goes
put
from
it
there,
in the show notes. We'll put it in
but
the show notes. Yeah.
yeah, but Music, Memory, and Meaning is the main part of the title. It's so funny. It's what
Again,
my
I'm
brain
gonna
isn't
get it.
working.
I'm gonna get it. I know. Poor Rashonda. It keeps coming in and
I
coming out.
know.
The deal is with her thing. So we're gonna wrap up. I hate to do it because I have so many more questions, but I do want to end with, first of all, I'm a prevention girl, so I just feel like everything that you're teaching is, and you, the link that, or the Spotify deal that you brought up with the league, that's a way to be prepared. So in a way, it's prevention. That God forbid, that someone gets has dementia within your family, but to prepare,
Mhm.
how cool that is. And then you have that already, and you don't wait until then to experience it. Like music is so therapeutic.
Yeah.
No. And with your parents now, like I'm on fire thinking I need my mom, first of all, to get Spotify. Second of all, to go in there and just scroll through some songs, like I have
Mhm.
an idea. I think she's got it in her living will, and how she wants her funeral plan and all that jazz, which we should do and I haven't done. But, thank you for that. That was really, really great. I think it's a great way to be prepared and to experience love through and connection and relationships through music now.
Yeah,
Some
yeah, and
beautiful.
also talking about again, I feel like we could
I
continue
know, I
the
know, I
conversation,
know.
and I'm happy to come back on if you want.
I'm gonna have you. I always ask that.
Yeah,
So yay.
but, also what's really helpful about all of those platforms, no matter what one you use, Spotify is not endorsing me, it's just the one I use,
Yeah, yeah, me
but no
too.
matter what one you use, they've created playlists for you. So another good starting point, this just popped into my head, if you know someone loves Otis Redding, you can look for Otis Redding playlists on these platforms, and then as your loved one's listening, they can decide which songs they like. Then
Yeah,
you create your own playlist from that playlist. So
yeah,
it's kind of a jumping off point
yeah.
if if you feel overwhelmed to create
Yeah,
it
I
from
mean,
nothing.
it's what I do too. I find my
Yeah.
artist and then I go and then I pick the songs that I like from
Yep.
there. And I also like that you encouraged us all to expand our music. So on that note, it'll be our segue before we close, is Tara Jenkins, what kind of music do you like? If you had to pick one kind of music, or if you can think of a song right off your head, but what do you like to listen to?
Oh man, I'm all over the place, but probably two. I'll give you two total polar opposite.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
I love Led Zeppelin's "Fool in the Rain."
Stop it right now.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Are you kidding? Nobody
I
says that.
I
Nobody
love
says
that song. I love that song for so many reasons, but it's for me loud, windows down, driving, like singing at the top of my lungs, like always makes me feel good.
Oh my gosh, I am
So
a Led
yeah.
Zeppelin fan.
Yeah, yeah, so that's one. And then on the other side of things is a band called Beirut.
I don't
And
know them.
they are, I don't even know like what type of style to describe them as, but the lead singer plays ukulele and trumpets and horns, and it's very different from Led Zeppelin, but I absolutely love them. I've seen them several times. I don't think they really tour anymore, but they're constantly coming out with new music. So I love them. And then I'll give you one more because I can't just give one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The therapist. Willie Nelson would probably be another one for me that I
I still
just
like
like
Willie
deeply
Nelson. Yes.
resonate. And I've seen him in concert many times. I got to see him at his ranch when I was out in Austin at Good Luck Ranch, or Luck. I think it's just Luck Ranch in Austin. And so, yeah, that's three very different music
Yeah.
points for me. But I think that kind of sums up for me what's powerful music that I like to hear day in and
Yeah,
day out.
thank you for sharing that. And I would say that I absolutely, Led Zeppelin is my number one. And in the 70s, I really just like, and so that was cool to hear, you go and like, so I was born in 67. So my tween ages, in those
Hmm.
70s years, Led Zeppelin, hands down, I love pretty much everything Led Zeppelin does. And then I like from the 70s, I just have lots of memories from Bread, if you remember
Oh yeah, uh-huh.
listen to Bread now, but if that song ever comes on, I'm like all
Yeah.
nostalgic. I was in my basement, like longing for my second grade love, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So Bread, and then Casey and the Sunshine Band, man, you play them,
Mhm.
and we're jamming in the car. I also like Oh my God. What's his name? See, this is what happens to me. My husband makes fun of me. He knows every lyric to every song, and I make up
Yeah.
my own words. I just like
Yeah.
don't know the lyrics.
I say you can sing a song on any syllable. You don't
Why,
need the
thank you
words.
very
You can
much,
just pick
Sarah.
a syllable and
Thank
hum
you
it.
very
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. No, but I love Tom Petty,
Oh,
um,
yeah, I love Tom Petty
Phoenix,
too.
okay, and I could go the Eagles, I could go on,
Mhm.
but those are some of my favorites, and we'll be done. I'll be like, oh, I wish I would have told her this. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm kind of all over the place, but yeah, my husband has a lot of music preferences. He has expanded. He grew up and he was like the headbanger guy, he liked all
Mm.
the Metallica and
Yeah.
Guns N' Roses and those guys. But anyway, okay, we're gonna wrap up. You've been such an amazing guest, and you're so experienced and intelligent and educated and passionate about the work that you do. I wish for everyone, like, honestly, I'm not just saying this because you're my guest. I wish and pray for everyone to be able to have a Tara in their community
Oh,
with
thank you.
their loved one. It's making me verklempt right now because I know what it did for my dad.
Yeah.
See, I am
Oh,
getting verklempt. Um, and it's just so healing. It's
yeah.
so healing, and everybody deserves that. So, okay, whew.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Rashonda
You're
would thank you
welcome.
too if her internet hadn't punked out. So
Yeah.
we will have you back on, and I really appreciate the work you do. And anytime I have the opportunity to toot your horn, I absolutely will. And thank you, thank you, thank you. And we will
Yeah.
put all your information in the show notes, okay?
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much. It was
Thank
nice to
you
be here
so
today.
much. Have a great rest of your day. All right.
Yep.
Talk to you guys all soon. And thank you all for being here with us. We love you so much. Share this with someone that you love so that they can figure out ways to get music therapy in their community and to their loved one and their caregivers. Thanks everyone. Bye.